Life does not always ask us what we want from it. Sometimes life turns the question around and asks what it wants from us. In moments of comfort, this question feels abstract, but in moments of extreme suffering, it becomes unavoidable. Welcome to Booksbell. Today, we explore one of the most profound and influential works ever written on meaning, suffering, and human resilience. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and later transformed his experiences into a powerful psychological philosophy. In this summary, we will explore what gives life meaning even in the darkest circumstances, why suffering itself is not meaningless, how human freedom still exists under extreme conditions, and how responsibility, not happiness, may be the true foundation of a meaningful life. This is not a story about optimism. It is a story about truth, dignity, and the quiet strength of the human spirit. At the heart of this work is a simple but challenging idea, that even when everything is taken away from a person, comfort, safety, freedom, loved ones, one thing remains: the freedom to choose one's attitude. Inside the concentration camps, people were stripped of their identities. They were reduced to numbers. Hunger, exhaustion, humiliation, and constant fear became part of daily life. Death was not an abstract concept, it was present everywhere. Yet even in these conditions, differences between people emerged, not in physical strength, but in inner stance. Some individuals became cruel, selfish, and desperate to survive at any cost. Others, despite having nothing, still found ways to comfort fellow prisoners, share their last piece of bread, or offer words of encouragement. This contrast revealed something essential. External circumstances alone do not determine who we become. Suffering, as described here, is unavoidable in certain stages of life, but suffering itself is not what destroys a person. What destroys a person is the belief that suffering has no meaning. When pain is inevitable, it confronts us with a choice. We can allow it to reduce us to despair, or we can allow it to deepen our understanding of life. Meaning is not found by avoiding pain at all costs, but by responding to pain with dignity. One of the most powerful insights is that people who had a reason to live, a future task, a loved one, a responsibility yet to be fulfilled, were far more likely to survive. Meaning acted like an inner anchor. Those who lost their sense of purpose often declined rapidly, not only mentally but physically. Hope, however, was not blind optimism. False hope was dangerous. When prisoners believed liberation would come on a specific date and it did not, the disappointment often led to collapse. True hope was quieter and deeper. It was rooted not in timelines, but in purpose. Another central idea is that life's meaning changes from moment to moment. There is no single universal meaning of life. Instead, each situation asks something different of us. Sometimes life asks us to act, sometimes it asks us to love, and sometimes it asks us simply to endure. Meaning can be discovered in three main ways. First, through creating or accomplishing something. Second, through experiencing something deeply, such as love, beauty, or truth. And third, through the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. Love, in particular, is described not as sentimentality, but as a deeply spiritual experience. Even in the absence of physical presence, the inner image of a loved one gave people strength. Love became a source of meaning that could not be taken away by external forces. There is also a critical warning against the pursuit of happiness as a goal. Happiness, according to this philosophy, cannot be chased directly. It emerges as a byproduct of living meaningfully. The more one tries to force happiness, the more it slips away. Meaning, on the other hand, demands responsibility rather than pleasure. Modern life, though far removed from concentration camps, presents its own form of emptiness. Many people experience what is described as an existential vacuum, a sense of inner emptiness, boredom, and lack of direction. This void is often masked by distractions, consumption, or constant busyness, but it remains unresolved. When meaning is absent, people may seek power, pleasure, or approval to fill the gap, but these substitutes rarely satisfy for long. The deeper issue is not the lack of comfort, but the lack of purpose. Another striking insight is that suffering should not be compared. Pain is personal and subjective. What matters is not how severe the suffering appears from the outside, but how it is experienced internally. Meaning is not reserved for extreme situations. It applies equally to everyday struggles. Freedom in this framework is not the absence of constraints. True freedom lies in choosing one's response. Even when we cannot change a situation, we can choose how we face it. This inner freedom is what preserves dignity. Responsibility plays a central role. Instead of asking what we expect from life, we are invited to ask what life expects from us. Each moment presents a unique demand. Fulfilling that demand is what gives life its depth. Work, relationships, and even suffering itself become meaningful when viewed through this lens of responsibility. Life is not primarily about self-fulfillment, but about self-transcendence, directing oneself towards something greater than personal comfort. There is also a caution against reducing human beings to psychological or biological mechanisms alone. Humans are not merely driven by instincts or conditioned responses. At their core, they are meaning-seeking beings. Ignoring this dimension leads to shallow explanations of human behavior. The message here is not that suffering is good, but that suffering is sometimes unavoidable. When it is unavoidable, it can still be transformed. When it is avoidable, we have a responsibility to remove it. Ultimately, this work does not offer easy answers. It offers a framework for facing life honestly. It reminds us that meaning is not given, it is discovered through engagement, commitment, and courage. Life may strip away comfort, certainty, and control, but it cannot strip away the freedom to choose one's stance toward what happens. That freedom is where meaning lives. And perhaps the most enduring lesson is this: life is asking something of you right now. The question is not whether life is fair, easy, or pleasant. The question is how you will respond.